Good morning. It's great to see everybody this morning. I hope you had a wonderful holiday week, and I see by the energy level of so many, you're so excited about tomorrow morning. I've never seen, down here, we're used to our sun, we're used to our bright, shiny days. We may complain about the heat, but truth be told, we love our bright, shiny days. So when it's cloudy and foggy and everything, we're just kind of put a smile on that face. It's a beautiful day. It's a day that God has given us, a day that we will not have again. We don't get it back, so we might as well smile and enjoy it. Looking at people, watching people, and looking at my own life, I've learned something, and that is humble people have more fun than proud people. Humble people are more of a joy to be around than prideful people. I'll give you an example. This morning, a few weeks ago, I went to the Kites house and I replaced a couple of their bathroom flappers. Now that's about the extent of my plumbing ability, replacing the flapper. In fact, I came out of there feeling awesome that I was able to do something. And Gail comes to me today. And her brother-in-law's in town doing a lot of projects around their house, and I asked how the toilet's still working okay. And she said, "Oh yes, they're doing wonderful. In fact, we can't go to the bathroom without thinking of you." Now, I could take that one or two ways. Great, all y'all going to be thinking about me when y'all go to the bathroom. Scare the mess out of anybody. Anyway, I could take that one of two ways. I could either be offended because it smacks me in a hurtful, prideful way. Or I can take that for the compliment joke that it was, laugh about it, and carry on. That's the joy of life. Prideful people don't have as much fun. Prideful people don't have joy. And that's what I want to talk about today. I was requested to speak about narcissism, and it's unfortunate that the person who asked me to speak about it's not here, but it is what it is. But that's what they put. Can you talk about narcissism? And it's like, whoa! That's a word you don't get to hear every now and then. Narcissism, narcissist. Anybody know the myth of Narcissus? I see one. Awesome. Okay. Let's do some classic literature. Classic myth legends. Now, Narcissus, there's a few versions of this, but the punchline is the same. It's just based on which culture myth you're reading. Some of the details, minor characters change, but the overall conclusion's the same. There was a guy by the name of Narcissus, just rolls off the tongue. Narcissus. And apparently he was a very good-looking, one of those times you would just call a beautiful man. And the punchline of it is that one day he finds himself walking along a river. And he looks down, and for the first time in his life, he sees a reflection of himself. And he is enamored. He falls in love with his own reflection. And he lays down by the riverside to get a closer look. And as he lays down by the riverside, all thoughts of everything else that he needs to do, should be doing, anything that matters, flees his mind because he's wrapped up in the reflection of himself to the point that he dies. He's so in love with himself, he doesn't even think of feeding himself or drinking water. He dies. And again, based on which, if you're reading the Roman legend or the Greek legend, They still say that even by the river Styx and the land of the dead, you can still find Narcissus peering into the river for all eternity, in love with himself, having blocked out everything else that's around him. Narcissus. From that name, we have created the word narcissism, which over time actually has become a personality disorder. Here are some symptoms. They have an exaggerated exaggerated sense of self-importance. They have a sense of entitlement and require, notice the word require, constant, excessive admiration. They expect to be recognized as superior, even without achievements that warrant being viewed as superior. They exaggerate achievements and talents. They might be able to play chopsticks on the piano, and they say, yes, I am good enough to play Carnegie Hall. They are preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate. They believe they are superior and can only associate with equally special people. You do not reach my specifics for good friends or conversational companions, therefore you must leave. They monopolize conversations and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior. Why do we have to get around here and talk about you when I'm in the room with you? They expect special favors and unquestioning compliance with their expectations. You no longer have any good ideas anymore. It is all about what I want to do and what you can do for me. If there's nothing you can do for me, don't let the door hit you in the backside on your way out. They take advantage of others to get what they want. They have an inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. They are envious of others and believe others envy them because they are just so fantastically wonderful. They behave in an arrogant or haughty manner, and they insist on having the best of everything, from the best clothes to the best cars to the best house to the best office, all the way down to the best coffee mug. Now, aren't we glad that we don't encounter anything like this in 2017 America? Last Friday, Sherry and I and the kids went to the library. No, 2 Fridays ago. 2 Fridays ago, Sherry and I and the kids went to the library. Sydney needed a new book because she just burns through books like her dad does. On our way out, if you've never been to the McAllen Public Library, shame on you. No. If you've never been to the McAllen Public Library, they have the double set of doors as you go in, right? And so we were leaving, and so my family was heading to the door, and at the same time this other family was heading to the door, and one of the members of that family was a little older lady. I don't want to say old lady because I'm going to get smacked by somebody. A little older lady walking on a cane. And obviously, I'm 6'4" with legs that fit it. This lady's a little shorter. She's probably about 5'2", walking on a cane. So obviously, my long-legged family's moving a little bit faster than them. All right, so we're going to the door, and I was proud of my son because I get the first door. Ethan runs out and gets the second door, and we're just waiting, holding the doors open so that this family can walk in amongst us. So what you have is, again, my family's moving a little faster, so you have Sydney and Sherry walking through the door, and there's like this gap, small gap, and then there's this other little old lady's family coming in behind us, and we're going to hold the door for all of them. And so in this gap, there's this this young girl has her earphones on, looking at her phone, not even paying attention to everything, just jumps into that gap between my family and this other lady's family, walks through both doors, goes her other way, doesn't look up, doesn't say thank you, doesn't bat an eye, doesn't say excuse me after cutting off this little lady on a cane, doesn't do it, and just goes off on her merry way. And all of us, my family and their family, we just all look at her and just think, huh? It was just like, did you not see us here? She didn't. She didn't. Because she was wrapped up in her world. I was at a Walmart once. This was a long time ago. This was early 2000s. I was at a Walmart down where my parents live in southeast Dallas. And, they have the... you ever notice how Walmart has all these checkout lanes, but they don't have as many people to check out people as they have lanes, except for this time of year. Well, they have the express lane. I put that in quotations because just because something says express lanes doesn't mean anything. It's like the semi company that says Swift. It doesn't mean it. We're checking out groceries, and we're in the express lane. 15 items or less. Now, I'll be honest, sometimes I have accidentally miscounted and gone through that line anywhere, but, it's like one off, and again, I didn't do it on purpose. This lady comes up with a basket filled so much that it's curved, going into the checkout lane. And, this poor cashier, she had to be in high school, so she doesn't, she's not uncomfortable about slamming down an adult. And she says, ma'am, this is the checkout lane. And the lady, I still remember this to this day, looks at her and she says, oh, that sign doesn't apply to me. Well, excuse me, I didn't realize, may I bow to her lordship. What is she? What is that? It was nothing. Who was she? She was nobody. She was no different than I was, and it was nobody different from anybody else in the whole entire city of Dallas. But all of a sudden, the checkout sign does not apply to her for reasons in her head. That's it. I don't know. She could not look past herself to see the world around us. And this is what narcissism is. It's the failure to look at the world around us because we're too busy looking inwards. Now you look at this list that we talked about, and there's others that we could have covered. But we saw this. Expectation. Believe. They believe it. Why? Reasons. Because they think that they're the most important person on this entire planet of 7 billion people. They're number one. Now, as we looked at this list of how the narcissistic personality works, mirror that to what you know about the Bible. Marry that to what you know about how Christ lived. Marry that to what you know about how God teaches us to live. And see how the two equal out. I'll give you the short answer. They don't. They don't. Right now, we live in a very narcissistic time. I'm not going to say it's the worst that it's ever been, but it's just one of those times in which that narcissistic personality is coming out. People have expectations that they're just going to be treated better than everybody else because they are just who they are. But we cannot have those types of mindsets and still expect that we are following the ways of Christ. Flip over to 2 Timothy chapter 3. As Solomon said, there is nothing new under the sun. He's right. Because, everything that we just looked at, we're going to look at again. Paul wrote about it. You see examples of it in the Bible. You see examples of it in world history, for crying out loud. But in 2 Timothy chapter 3, we get it's popular because people, God bless people, they read this and they say, well, obviously Christ is coming back soon because people are acting like this. Okay, everybody, cool your jets. People were acting like this back in Paul's day as well. Okay, which is sad. But if you've never read this, I guarantee you've heard this. It says, but mark this. Uh-oh. I had a teacher in school. And when something important was going to come along, he used to say to us, write this down. Now, when he said, write this down, what that meant was we were going to see it again on a test. So we better pay attention to it. Paul says, mark this. Pay attention. There will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godlessness but denying its power. Again, surely we've never seen examples of this today. Oh yeah, we have. Yeah, we have. Yeah, we have. You know, we had Black Friday this past Friday. And so the ads have come out. And, you know, again, people who are in the ad business, it's their job to get people to spend their dollars. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, it's just you listen to these commercials and you just think, oh, for Pete's sake. Because have you noticed it, that as the closer we get to Christmas, which is a very big gift-giving holiday, in case you haven't noticed, is the attitude of the people deserve to get these big, expensive gifts. There's a deserving there. I merit this. I deserve this. And if I don't get this, that means that I am not loved. They used to have one, I think I shared with you this last year. There was this ad in New Mexico that they had come on, and it was for a credit company, and they said, you know, and this very chipper lady would come on the radio, and she would say, oh, just bring your car in, and we'll give you credit for those holiday gifts. You don't even have to give us your slips. Just give us your car. And you can have the money you need because your family deserves it. And why do they run those commercials every year? Because unfortunately, every year people fall for it. And it works. Are we so wrapped up into what we think we are, what we think we deserve, what we think we merit, that we have blinded ourselves to the rest of the world around us? Look at this list again and think about what happens when these things happen. And again, first of all, Paul said that they're going to be terrible. Terrible days ahead. Terrible times in the last days. What are the last days? The last days were anything from Jesus ascending back into heaven until now. These were the last days. We've had 2,000 years of last days. People will be lovers of themselves. Number one with the bullet. People will be lovers of themselves. Now, the Bible tells us that the greatest command is to love God, love our neighbor as ourselves. And then say, well, is Paul contradicting themselves? What's the problem here? Oh, come on. Let's not be so gullible. We're talking about an unhealthy love of self. Because also in this list, there's no mention of love of neighbor. It's all directed towards itself. We do need to love ourselves. We do need to value ourselves. We do not need to fall prey to the tempting thought that means I humble myself to the point of humiliation. God does not make any trash. That means all the rest of the people in the world and also us. It is okay to love ourselves. In fact, we cannot love other people properly unless we know how to love ourselves. We cannot value other people if we do not see the value in ourselves. Yes, there is a place to love ourselves. Yes. But like anything else, you take anything out of the context of self-control and it spirals out of control. We are not supposed to only love self. We are not supposed to only look out for number one and curtain off the rest of the world. Look at the world we have. Why is the world the way it is? One big reason is because we love ourselves too much. We love ourselves too much, and that affects everything else around us. It affects how we view other people. affects how we view things. It affects how we treat everything, from other people all the way down to property. It affects it. You know, I love, you know, there's environmentalists out there who are fighting tooth and nail to save the planet. But for crying out loud, they can't pick up after their own environmental watches and marches. You see the pictures. It was just trash thrown all over the place. But save the planet. Why? Because they're looking to themselves and they expect other people to pick up after them. That's the irony of the situation. We're not supposed to be like this. When we become lovers of ourselves, we're blinded to everything else, and all of a sudden we're narcissists looking down at the river, looking at our reflection, blinded to everything else that's around us, slowly dying because of our inability to pay attention. Lovers of money. We love our stuff. We live in a time now in which we will abuse and rip off other people for the sake of stuff. We'll use people to get stuff instead of using stuff in order to be a better blessing to people. Do we realize that our cell phones don't love us? Do we realize that our property doesn't love us? It never will love us because it doesn't have the ability to love us. I remember Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And the girl that Indiana Jones was traveling with in this adventure, she's hanging over a cliff. Indiana Jones is holding on to her, and she's trying to reach out for the Holy Grail. And she's grasping for it, and she sees it. And you can see the greed in her face. She's reaching for it. She loves it. She wants it. And she dies. Because she cannot take her eye off what she wants to get a better grip to Indiana Jones, who's trying to save her life. Are we so wrapped up in stuff that we're blind to the dangers that we're putting ourselves in? Boastful, proud, abusive. Again, look at how we treat others. We take love away from society. This is what we get. If we're not loving others, we're going to turn our love to ourselves. What happens? What hope is there for society when children turn against their parents? They're disobedient to their parents. They're ungrateful. We just celebrated Thanksgiving. How can we celebrate Thanksgiving if we're not grateful for any of the blessings that we have received? What hope is there for society when people cannot just look out on a beautiful day and just say, you know what, I'm just thankful to be alive. I'm just thankful to be here. I'm just thankful to be where I am today and for the life that I've been able to have. We take Thanksgiving out of the equation. What do we become? Sad people. Unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous. We become dark. We're without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. We take love of God out of the equation. What are we left with? We're left with the love of pleasure. We're left with the self-gratification. Why is it that so many pagan religions, it doesn't take long before they get to the gratification of self? They get to the unholy worship of pleasures. Because if we don't love God, what other direction is there to go? If we're not going out, if we're not reaching out with the love of God, we're starting to reach into the love of self. So what do we do? What can we do? I notice what Paul says, some very hard language. Have nothing to do with them. Don't become like them. Don't be sidetracked by them. Don't become clouded by their way of thinking. Have nothing to do with them and their way of life. That way of life is empty. Look around and we know it to be true. People who are arguing and yelling and cussing and looking for all this wonderful change that they want our country to go through. They get what they want. Does that make them happy? No, it doesn't. They're still miserable. Why? Because they're seeking for self. And the seeking of self is an empty pursuit. They still have nothing. Verse 6, they are the kind who worm their way into homes and gain control over weak-willed women, who are loaded down with sins, are swayed by all kinds of evil desires, always learning but never able to acknowledge truth. Just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so also these men oppose the truth. Men of depraved minds, who as far as the faith is concerned are rejected. But they will not get very far, because as in the case of those men, their folly will be clear to everyone. It worms their way in like a worm in an apple. It goes in and destroys from within. This is what pride, arrogance, narcissism does to the person. It comes in and corrupts us, where we think, oh, all I have to do is keep making myself happy. We do it, and it might be happy for a little bit, but all of a sudden, it doesn't quench that thirst, so to speak. And all of a sudden we're looking for something more, and looking for something more, and looking for something more. And we keep hitting that dead-end wall because it no longer gratifies. And we're getting darker and darker and more down, and we become more blinded. This is the tale of addiction. This is also the tale of sin. This is also the tale of arrogance. We've been watching the Gospel of John movie on Sunday mornings. And again, read the Gospel and you look at the people who opposed Jesus. And it's like, why? Why did they argue so much with Jesus? Why was it that every time Jesus said something, they had to come back in anger and try to refute? Because they were blinded by themselves. And what they thought they had. In reality, they had nothing. Paul here talks about a couple of people, Jannes and Jambres. Now, these people cannot be found in the Old Testament, but people believe that these are some of the magicians that Moses threw down against during the 10 plagues of Egypt. And if you go back and read those 10 plagues of Egypt, there was a time there, the first couple, Moses would perform a plague, God would enable Moses to perform a plague, and then the magicians would be able to do it too, by their arts. But then there came a time in which they were not able to produce. As long as they were able to produce the same plagues that Moses did, I don't know why they would want to. Moses turns all the water into blood. They've actually found some clean water, and the magician said, wait, I can turn this into blood too, and we can't drink that either. Isn't that wonderful? Whatever. But they did it, and as long as they were able to perform those same signs, Pharaoh was comforted. But then all of a sudden, their power was not worth anything. They were learned. They were smart. They were intelligent. They had nothing. The Pharisees of Jesus' day, they were learned. They were intelligent. They were smart. They had nothing. Today, oh, goodness sakes, everybody's an instant expert thanks to Dr. Google. We're intelligent. We're smart. We're learned. We have nothing. Because we are the roadblock in our own lives. That's what all this is about. Narcissism is the worship of self. Narcissism is a great folly. Because we think as long as we're doing okay, as long as we're on top, as long as I'm getting what I want, and as long as I surround myself with people who serve no other purpose besides giving me what I want, then I'm winning. No, we're not. A few times in the Bible quotes from the Proverbs. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. As we saw this morning, Peter quotes it, James quotes it. Why is it that would be a running thought? We are getting in our own ways. We want the peace that God can give us. Get out of the way. We want the knowledge that God can give us. Get out of the way. We want the humility. We want the grace. We want the love of our neighbors. We want the ability to grow stronger in a Christian community so that we can be the salt and light to the world around us. For Pete's sake, brothers and sisters, get out of our own way. Pride and arrogance is the way of the world, and it's not the way of Christ. Thanks be to God that Christ was not as arrogant as the people who are around Him, because He would never have gotten onto that cross. It is time for us to show the world a different way. It is time for us to humble ourselves before God so that we may receive His grace. Because the pride of the world is trying to reach inside the family of Christ. Which is why the attitude of confession, of humble confession, has died in the church. Oh, I can't let other people know that I'm a sinner. They might look at me weird. This is why the attitude of repentance is hard to go. We love talking about it. But do we reach out to our brothers and sisters to let the walls down a little bit? Not necessarily to everybody at once, but just to a brother or sister or two. And to just say, I am struggling. I can't do it on my own. I am now humbling myself. Are we willing to show the grace of God to one another? But we can't do it. The Bible speaks repeatedly over the beauty of confession, over the beauty of repentance, over the beauty of carrying each other's burdens, but we cannot do it if we are too busy trying to carry the world's pride. What hope is there for the world if the family of Christ is not even able to show the benefit of being a part of Christ? We have to get out of our own way. Stop looking at our own reflection in the river. Look up and pay attention to the world that's around us and see a world that is hurting, a world that needs to be humble, a world that needs God's grace. Every person we see is a person who will spend eternity somewhere. Kick narcissism to the curb. Get the pride out of our lives. And seek the grace that God wants to give us. But this is the thing about God's grace. We can't get it and we can't see the benefit of it without first humbling ourselves. It will be invisible. It's not that God can't turn a proud heart. It's the person who's prideful. It's invisible to them. The need of forgiveness, the need that God might have to forgive me, that's foreign. It's blinding to the proudful person. Get that out and see what God's grace really is. This morning we like to offer the invitation. Those of you who might be hurting, who might need prayer, who might be fighting over things, don't let pride keep you in your seats. Don't let pride keep you alone. I guarantee you, whatever it is that you're going through in life, you are not the only one who has ever gone through it. There might even be someone here who's gone through the same thing that you have and has come out the other side. I also guarantee you that we serve a Lord who has fought the temptation that you're fighting and conquered it. And that's the glory of following God. He knows what it's like. And He doesn't look at us sternly. He's waiting for us to come home so that He can comfort us and celebrate at our return. Or you might wish to put your Savior on in baptism. Maybe you've had enough. You've had enough of the way of this world. You've had enough. You're tired. You're tired of the life of sin. You're tired of that previous life, and you're looking to make that change for the Lord. You want to become part of Christ. Well, we have the baptistry here. It's ready. If you have reached that decision that you would like to put your Savior on in baptism to have your sins washed away, we would love to assist you in that this morning. But whatever needs you have,